Welcome to episode 1 of Lead Strong. My name is Stephanie Hopper. I'm the Director of Development Solutions at Cappfinity, and I'm joined by my co-host, Celine Floyd. Celine will introduce herself shortly. A few words on Cappfinity though. We're a global business. We're based in Birmingham, London, Dublin, New York and Sydney, and we've been helping organisations to find candidates, develop employees and transform their businesses around our USP of strengths-based assessment and development for well over 15 years. In my role at Cappfinity, I head up the team responsible for the end-to-end design and delivery of all our development programs and solutions. I bring a combination of experience from working within a variety of organisational roles around the globe, my master's in applied positive psychology and running my own business and working as a coach and facilitator with hundreds of leaders to help them get the most from their strengths. Celine and I have been working together for the past 3 years, which has been an absolute delight. I think it is for me. Well, it definitely is for me. Hopefully Celine says the same. So Celine, over to you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about what we've got planned for Lead Strong.
Thank you, Steph. This is so exciting. Our very first episode of this really wonderful programme. So very exciting. And thank you for everyone that's going to join us on this journey. So yes, Celine Floyd, I'm the Director of Leadership Assessments at Cappfinity. I am a chartered occupational psychologist and have been in consultancy for, my goodness, coming up to 20 years now, which is quite scary. And I work predominantly in the leadership space, so supporting organisations with their leadership people agenda. And that has given me the privilege of working with a real range of organisations around the world. And I am really passionate about making sure that organisations are doing all they can to make sure they have the right leaders in the right roles, doing the right things and just loving what they do. As Steph said, we've worked together for a number of years and we're really excited to bring this collaboration to you. A little bit more about what we have created here and what we're hoping the programme will be. So Lead Strong is a series of episodes. We're going to broadcast live every 2 weeks, 1:30 on a Wednesday, and we will be joined by 2 guests every fortnight. And these guests will be a real range of individuals, some in organisations, some between roles, some leading their own companies, and they will be from a global base. And we will be talking about everything to do with leadership, and specifically, you know, what are the challenges that that leaders are facing, and how in organisations and as professionals in this space we can really help people. We're hoping, Steph, aren't we, that what we can give to listeners through this series is a combination of some really good practical tips, so things that you can take away and deploy in your roles tomorrow, as well as just some real food for thought, you know, sparking debate around different issues. So a combination of takeaways and just musings, which I think is critical, especially given, you know, everything that we've been through in the last 18 months collectively as a global society. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Brilliant. And Celine, I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about Altitude, which some people may have heard of, and it's our kind of leadership assessment and development solution. You know, what is it and how did it come about?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, Steph, Altitude is our leadership assessment and development solution. And Cappfinity, we've been pioneers in strengths-based assessment for just over 15 years now. And historically working predominantly in the early career space. So really disrupting that industry and how apprentices and graduates are recruited into organisations and leveraging strengths to really help with, you know, social mobility as a real kind of pioneer there. And over the years, a lot of our clients have been fallen in love, really, essentially, with the strengths-based approach and wanted to kind of roll out that strengths-based philosophy and approach right up to the top of the organisation. So Altitude was born out of our client demand to be able to use strength at that most senior level. And Altitude is a real end-to-end proposition. So it leverages strengths through the diagnostic at the front end. We've got a leadership model which has 8 leadership strengths in. It's only 2 years old, that model. I'm so proud of that, and I love that about it because it's very modern day, very fresh. And we have an online tool that assesses those strengths, and individuals going through the Altitude experience then typically go on to do an interview, and then through a really exciting development journey, which can be anything from very light touch, digital mentor pieces dropping in your inbox, through to very executive one-to-one coaching. The things we're passionate about with Altitude are the leadership strengths and really using the strengths kind of methodology and the use of technology. We're asking leaders to be digitally savvy, but for years I felt that we've been a little bit hypocritical actually in terms of not actually deploying technology in our solutions. And as I say, just being a bit more modern day. I think, Steph, as people listen into these sessions and get to know us and our style, they'll see that we're high energy, we're really passionate about this, and I think we both feel that the leadership kind of assessment and development industry needs to be pulled into this century really, because so much has changed and so much has happened. So that's what the Altitude solution is really. It's a way of assessing and developing modern day leaders to really make an impact, and it's been interesting, hasn't it, to reflect on the solution and kind of build on the solution given everything, as I say, that's happened in the last 18 months. And I think 2021, we would have seen that as a challenging year given everything happening in the world pre-COVID-19, let alone what the pandemic has done. And Steph, I'm really interested actually in your views of, what are the key challenges that leaders are facing in 2021 given everything that's been happening?
Yeah, there's a huge amount of complexity, isn't there? And I think it's really interesting because we've just conducted a piece of research which will be released in the next couple of weeks, which is really all about learning at work in 2021 and some of the things that have happened as a result of the pandemic. But in that research and in those interviews, we conducted over 25 interviews with leaders around the world. We found that actually one of the things we asked them was what they feel leaders need to be focused on actually over the next year. And the thing that came through loud and clear from the majority was people's well-being. So this is something we all keep hearing. And I think it's crucial, but really tricky to implement is what I heard from lots of those interviews. So we know it's important. We know that all of us have had to work in a very different way, and lots of people are probably feeling tired. But actually, the thing that I always feel challenged about as a leader around well-being is that what I need to do for my well-being is probably very different to what you need to do or someone else needs to do. So it's quite hard to create a one-size-fits-all policy. And I think then what happens is organisations often get perhaps criticised for the efforts they try to make because those one-size-fits-all policies don't suit a lot of people and don't necessarily help those individuals' well-being. So they end up then being seen as a sort of a token gesture. So I think that's a really crucial one. And we've seen in a lot of our development programs, if well-being didn't feature already, people are asking for it to feature, which, causes a challenge because you sort of think as learning and development professionals, we're not necessarily well-being professionals, but we can see the reason why people want to integrate that message into development activity. The other thing that I think will be a big focus is, it's the word that's becoming now quite boring, isn't it? But this whole idea of hybrid working. And I think it's interesting because the wheels of industry overall have kept turning, and people have proved that working flexibly, not being in one location works, and that people have been productive. I think what will happen now is there'll be a challenge to organisations to think about more flexible working practices. So we've proved that location doesn't matter, but actually now, does everybody need to be online between 9 and 5:30, or actually is there flexibility in when people are available or not? Whilst of course appreciating that a lot of people feel the boundaries have just blurred and there are no times on or off, no times off. So I think that's going to kind of come into it and probably be linked to the well-being. And the other one that we heard through the interviews, which I thought was interesting, was people feeling like they needed to find more meaning and passion in their work. So they were looking for ways that leaders could help drive their engagement. And I think a lot of organizations will be in that place of kind of reset at the moment. And, you know, it's all about that visionary stuff, but really feeling that you can bring people along on that journey with you, and they feel connected to it. What about you, Celine? What are you seeing as some of the challenges? Similar things or different?
Yeah, everything you said really, really resonates. And I think, again, in a privileged position where I get to speak to, 5, 6 different organisations in one day. If I had £1 for every time that well-being or inclusion, and I think they go hand in hand, right? Like you're saying, actually, I think we're realising that everything is so individualised that inclusion has to run through every single thing that we're doing and everything that we're thinking about. If I had £1, I think I'd be very rich. I think that well-being is a huge issue, and a lot of my clients are talking about how they strike a balance there, because there is this feeling of we're emerging from this pandemic, hopefully, and everything that we knew about our lives and how we operated and our freedoms and our securities and the given access to family and friends, it's just completely, the bottom's come out of it completely. So people are, I think, emerging from what we could class as quite a traumatic experience, but for everyone in different ways. And so there is this need for well-being, but at the same time, organisations are looking ahead to ramping up, to picking things up, and we're going from survival mode to back to actually having to focus on what we need to do. And I was talking to a colleague this morning, actually, and she said that for the first time in 18 months, a member of her team wanted to have a career conversation. Where's my career going? And she said for her, that was just a real sign that, I can think now about the future. So for me, it's about how do we balance those? How do we appreciate that people are coming out of this highly stressful time and people aren't going back to who they were before? So how can we be cognizant of that and caring of that, but also put enough pressure on that we are delivering what we need to deliver and doing what we do? And I think that's going to be really hard for leaders, for leaders going forward. So that's definitely at play, I think, is the other, it's all a balance. It's very complex. It's all a balance. And like you say about the hybrid working, I think it's easy to think about, coming out of the pandemic as being, going to this hybrid working world, but it's so much more than that. So, a lot of complexity, and remembering critically that leaders are going through this themselves as well. And that's why, our work is so pivotal, because we start with the leader as an individual and helping them to understand themselves. And I think that can also be lost sometimes. And I've seen that be lost, especially over the last few months, because people are so focused on their teams, and actually who's creating the space for a leader to say, actually, this is how I feel, and this is how I've changed, and this is what I'm going through, and my aspirations for the future have changed in this way, or my thinking about this is different. So I strongly believe we need to tackle it with a dual weighting on helping the individual help themselves before they can help others. So that's definitely come to the fore as well.
I think it's a really good point, and actually something that we talked about last year when we were doing lots of work around leading through uncertainty was how leaders are often ahead of their teams on the change curve.
Yeah, that's true.
They have got the information ahead of their teams quite often, and
Yeah.
so they've digested it. They've come to terms with it, and then the information gets passed on. It might only be a couple of hours if it's a big announcement that they get that warning, but it changes that journey, I think, for individuals.
I agree. And one of the things that I have seen over the years when I'm working one-to-one with leaders is this perceived tension between being authentic and being a corporate citizen. And I think that plays really into that, this perception that as a leader I have to almost compartmentalize that. I'm going through my own change curve and I may feel like this about what the organization is doing, but I have to present in a certain way to the team because I'm speaking on behalf of the organization. And what I talk to a lot of leaders about is that there is a way for them to sit side by side. And I think, again, speaking to a client this morning, I think the strengths philosophy and the strengths methodology has always celebrated authenticity, this sense of being who I am, and I can change, but probably only to a certain, degree. It's about understanding my strengths. How can I flex them? But my strengths are my strengths, probably. And that's always been celebrated in the work that Cappfinity do. And I think the pandemic has also done that. It's also put authenticity at the front end, hasn't it? And we've seen people feel like they can be more authentic. So I'm hoping that has acted as a bit of a catalyst for the leaders that I work with to say, so I can be who I am as a leader. And I can disagree with what's happening over here or feel uncomfortable about that. And I can do that and say that and still be a good corporate citizen for the organisation, which I think is well, for me, it's one of the core challenges at that leadership level, actually.
Yeah, there's a real tension there, isn't there? And it's getting comfortable with that, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just mentioned, how important our strengths are as leaders in helping us recognise, who we are as authentic leaders. So for those who've got a keen eye, Cappfinity has a new strap line, which is on our website, and that's putting strengths to work. I'm just wondering, Celine, you as a leader, what's a good example of where you've put your strengths to work recently?
Oh my goodness, good question. So again, let's talk about authenticity. I'll be authentic here. I returned from my second maternity leave at the beginning of the year. Two lovely boys, but 2 boys under 3. Maternity leave in the pandemic last year. Was very excited about coming back to work, actually, to kind of coming back into it. And I think even I underestimated, the challenge of the new world and working in this way. And, for those that I engage with me on LinkedIn will see that I did a post 4 weeks in saying I'm finding it really weird that I'm not in my clients' offices, and how much I loved that, you go in and you wait for your meeting and you can sponge up who's around and the culture of the organisation and just the living and breathing kind of 4 walls feeling. And so I think taking all of that together, those who know me won't be surprised that drive is my number one strength. My mum especially finds that hysterical. She's like, that was you from you were like 3. If you wanted to do something, you would do it. And, I must admit, I think that strength has really been put to work, kind of just really driving through, really passionate about the altitude solution and the work we're doing to disrupt and mix up how leadership assessment and development is done. But it's tricky in this new world. Consultancy is tricky in this new world. So drive, absolutely, driving it through, and determined to change how things are done for the benefit of people that are working in organisations, essentially. How about you? Back to you.
Yeah, your drive causes me some anxiety.
Yeah, sorry, not sorry.
But funny enough, I've got it in my profile, so I understand it.
Okay.
But, no, it's great. I think, yeah, it's really interesting. I feel like one of the strengths I really enjoy using is Catalyst, getting other people excited about projects and getting them going. I'm not so good at kind of finishing them off myself, but I've got loads of brilliant people in my team who are great at doing that and seeing things through. But I suppose the thing that I'm finding is I can't use Catalyst on its own at the moment. And just going back to that sort of theme around people's well-being and their preferences and inclusion and so on, and the fact that we can't have the same amount of fun, or we haven't been able to at all in our lives for a while, I feel I do spend a lot of time thinking about the individuals that I work closely with and how I can, what they need at different times. And I don't think I get it right all the time, but things like we've got a sort of ritual now in the team where we all put some money together and buy people flowers when it's their birthday. And I just try and make sure I organise that each month when it's someone's birthday, because I know that I won't remember at the time, but if I just do it like once a month, I think about, has anyone got an anniversary? Has anyone got a birthday? Like, what's going on? Like, and also just making sure that we call out and recognise some, any key moments or things that are done well or special occasions. I think the challenge is when you're tailoring to lots of people's preferences, it can feel exhausting at times because you're kind of trying to, take into consideration lots of different views and lots of different feelings. And I guess that's when it's important to allow some flexibility as well, because it might be what you're suggesting doesn't work for everybody, and that's okay. So I think for me, it's been like, it's sort of individualization, I guess, paying attention to lots of small things I feel is really critical, and it hopefully helps support people's well-being and the way they feel at work every day.
You do that really well. You do that really well. And well, we all know your team couldn't speak more highly of you. And I think what's interesting is when I work with leaders on that, I often try and explain it to people that maybe feel that they're not so good at that kind of on a monthly basis, consciously and physically looking at what's coming up, whose birthday is coming up, is the way to do it. And I think people that it doesn't come naturally to feel like that's kind of faking it. Oh, well, if I have to remember, it's going to come across as really orchestrated. And actually it's just acknowledging that it's impossible to remember. I've got my friends' babies' birthdays written down. I can't remember 14 children's birthdays, so and that's okay. That's a good thing that you're making the effort to do that. So I think but like you say, it's hard when we're not together. And you can't do the very natural, we're all in the office, pull out the birthday cake or go for a drink after work. So yeah, tough.
I was fishing for a compliment. I did well there then, didn't I?
One you're going to get in the series.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us, Celine, before we close, a little bit more about what we've got coming up in the next few weeks on Lead Strong. We're running this series until the beginning of July. So we've got about 7 episodes, haven't we, planned?
We've got 7 episodes, and then the ambition is that we will have a little hiatus over the summer and then restart the programme in the autumn. We thought of that, didn't we, Steph? We've been actually so inundated with people that want to join the sessions that we're thinking that's probably a complete necessity now. There's so much to talk about. So we do have a structure for the sessions, reasonably structured, but we've given ourselves flexibility because we know and we've learned that things can be really unpredictable, and were something to happen, current affairs wise, we may flex the topic that given fortnight to give a space and for reflection and contribution on that. But at the moment, it is structured that we will talk about key, pertinent issues relating to leadership each week. So our first one, which is in 2 weeks' time, so the 28th of April, there we're looking at inclusion. and the role of inclusive leadership. It's one of our strengths within our leadership model. We're very passionate about it. We've got two fantastic speakers coming on. Both of their work day to day is around inclusivity, working with different populations, interestingly, so trying to get a real spectrum of views there. And then going forwards, we're going to be talking about the hybrid working, piece, how we navigate that, collaboration, relationship navigation as a leader. We'll be speaking about strategy, strategic, how leaders can be strategic. And and we've got, as I say, it will be 2 guests per week. And we've orchestrated it so that each guest comes from quite a different organisation to the other, to give a really different view. And we've also got actually in June one session that looks at leaders in the technology sector, and that will be particularly interesting. So and we'll have speaker there from the US, and then another speaker looking at what tech startup kind of companies need from leadership. So really varied, different topics. We'll be marketing the upcoming session in advance, so you'll see what the topic is, and we'll be obviously recording these sessions for circulation afterwards, and we'll be doing a soundbite of each one as well. So each fortnight we will record a 90-second summary, I guess, of the session, so that you can listen to a quick 90 seconds, see if it piques your interest, and if you want to hear more, you can go on to hear the further recording. So yeah, really grateful for all the wonderful speakers that have signed up, and been really overwhelmed, haven't we, Steph, by people's enthusiasm to kind of get on and talk about these really important things.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Brilliant. So I guess just to summarise some of the things we've tried to cover today in introducing Lead Strong to you. First of all, that, really it's a series that is focused on leadership today in the 21st century, and, really the complexity and huge amount of change and uncertainty that leaders are facing in all sorts of organizations, are sort of shining a spotlight on different things people are doing. Each week there'll be a brief a loose topic that we will dive into. So as Celine said, things like inclusion and self-insight, and there'll be guest speakers as well. And what we hope is that there'll be some nice takeaways for you and opportunities to contribute to the discussion via the chat window if you wish as well. I suppose some of the things that we're seeing that are real challenges at the moment for leaders is getting their head around the hybrid working. There's so much written about that, isn't there, currently? Also around well-being and needing to prioritise that for their organisations. And finally, I guess, really thinking about inclusion as well. So in summary, I hope that you will join us at our next episode, which is in 2 weeks' time, and at exactly the same time, actually, on a Wednesday. So same time as today. Tune in again. Anything else to add, Celine, to close?
No, just that it is very exciting to have just completed our first episode, and cannot wait for the rest of the series, and to be joined by a real cross-section of industry leaders from around the world, and to connecting with you all, and to getting some really good discussion underway. And as we say, some real kind of quick win takeaways that you can take back into your role tomorrow and start using. So excited about the journey, looking forward to it. Thank you, Steph, for being my partner in crime on this. And take care, enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.